reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 220, and we have got a packed show for you on this Saturday. We are recording a day early for reasons that will be explained in a moment. First, we're going to throw it out to... Is that Dakota I see? Holy smokes. Dakota's here. He is at Dakota J. Booth. Dak from the Pacific Northwest. What is up, my man?
Well, since I'll bury the lead here. So our good friend Todd is not here, so I will say it for him. Any day that you get to talk about a 4-1 thumping in the Premier League, which also just happens to be on the heels of two other Premier League wins, which also happens to be the first goal that you've given up in any of those three matches, it's a good day. So
I think there's one word you were missing from there, but we can. That's fine.
It'll work its way in, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will. Caroline is also here. She is at CG Stefco. Caroline, what's going on with you?
Not too much. Just been watching a lot of figure skating, which I guess is not unusual for me.
It is not.
Got some fun family plans tomorrow, so just getting the pod in tonight.
Yeah, we are getting it in. We're getting it in with Scott. He is here too. He is at Scotchy Bird. Scott, what's up, my man?
Look, Tottenham Hotspur or Spurs, definitely not Tottenham, is well and truly back. And as Caroline's, name, I don't know what's that called underneath her name, her tag says, could we? The double's on, baby, and I'm here to talk all about it. So let's go.
I don't know what kind of double you're talking about, but
I definitely was not referring to a double, but
mathematically still alive.
I have no idea what's going on there.
Until it's mathematically impossible, there's every chance we could win the league.
When you're right, you're right, and I don't think you're right in this case. But either way, we'll let it go. As I mentioned to the listeners and to the viewers watching us on YouTube, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, we are recording this a day earlier than we normally do. Of course, Spurs played on Saturday, which is a rarity this season. But also, Caroline, you said you had some family stuff. I have plans tomorrow to go out to Glendale, Arizona, and watch the U.S. women take on a Spurs contingent and the Australian women as part of the She Believes Cup. So I'm going to do that tomorrow. Little scouting trip for your boy. Gonna see what's up with the Matildas, who have not looked great either for Spurs or Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Not Tottenham. Or for Australia. So we'll see if they can improve that against the U.S. women tomorrow. That also means that we don't know Manchester City's result against Liverpool from Sunday, because like I said, that ain't happened yet. By the time you're listening to this, you may know it, but we don't know it yet. So we'll get into all that. And we're going to talk about what exactly Tottenham Hotspur are calling themselves or not calling themselves. And then there was that little thing called the Europa League draw that happened this week too. We will dive into that as well. But you guys, let's talk about Tottenham Hotspur 4, Ipswich Town 1. This was a way harder match than I not that I didn't expect it to be a difficult road match in the Premier League against a team scrapping in a relegation fight. And of course, some would say Spurs are scrapping in the very same relegation fight. I didn't personally, but this was a battle. And I don't think that the scoreline of 4-1 will quite reflect how difficult this match was. It seemed to be a lot of slip sliding on that pitch. There seemed to be a lot of hard fouls that went uncalled, a lot of players slipping and maybe getting touched and those getting called. It was an interestingly officiated match, but in the end, Dakota, Spurs got the job done based on two brilliant crosses from Son to Brennan Johnson and a lot of elbow grease and spit shine. This felt like a gritty Premier League victory.
It did. Especially those first 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe. We gave up several shots on target, a lot of nervy moments. Looked like our center back pairing was going to have to kind of just dig in, and we were going to have to hope for the best. But then they kind of turned it around a little bit after that. And Kevin Danso ended up having a really wonderful game, kind of doing what we tell our American football quarterbacks to do, and that's to have a short memory. Like, he forgot all about those first 10, 15 minutes and just balled out the rest of the game. And isn't it amazing what a Heung-min Son with a full week's rest looks like? He looks like the Heung-min Son that we all know and love. And man, it's so good to have Brennan Johnson back in the squad. He has this knack of putting himself in those dangerous positions that no one else in our squad is even half as good as him at getting into. And I said this to somebody earlier during the game, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of a niche skill to kind of figure your way back and just kind of be in the right spot at the right time. But when it happens, it's good. And it happened like 2 times really quickly, and he buried both of them, which his first brace in Tottenham Hotspur shirt, found that out today. So that's a really cool thing, really awesome thing for him. And the substitutions, being able to bring on adults for adults is just such a games changer.
Well, there were some kids there too, though. There were a few kids that still came on, but in a good way, like kids we want to see.
Yeah. Not 17-year-olds, but like 20-year-olds who have scored Europa League goals, which is fine. So yeah, rough start, but it didn't take us till halftime to wake up like it has earlier in the season. We kind of kicked it in gear halfway through the first half, and we're able to kind of ride that out. I think the team was really bummed to have given up that goal. So they all put in a lot of extra work defensively after that to make sure that it was only 1. And I don't think there was too much to say from Ipswich Town's side after that goal, which was a really good goal from them, to be fair to them. It was a tidy finish.
Caroline, what or who stood out to you in this win? I mean, Dakota brings up the Brennan Johnson of it all, the Kevin Danso of it all. I feel like there's a lot of ways we could go on this. As for those watching, Dakota's rocking the Lucas Bergvall kit. What stood out to you in this win?
Well, I will say that Lucas had one run that literally got me up off my seat. He just seems to be like really coming on in leaps and bounds lately. But yeah, I think Kevin Danso really did impress me. You know, not maybe the best start to the game, but definitely a great finish. And he just seems like he has fit in kind of seamlessly. You know, I think his signing was kind of under the radar and like maybe not the most exciting for the fan base, but it looks like it's working out pretty well. So yeah, I was really glad to see him have a good game after all. And, you know, I mean, Sonny, I saw a stat that this is his 9th season in a row getting 20 or more goal contributions in all competitions, 9 in a row, which I think for the last few of those, he's allegedly been washed. So I don't know how that works, but
who said that?
Not me, certainly not me. But yeah, he had a great game. Brennan, you know, delivering. I was astounded that was his first brace because I thought he had already done that a long time ago. But, you know, good for him. And I also want to give some credit to Dane Scarlett for that very, like, you know, I hate to give Harry Kane credit at the moment, but it was very Kane-esque kind of flick on assist for Jed's goal. Oh, no, for Decky's goal, sorry. And yeah, I just think, you know, we're getting contributions from all across the pitch, which I think is kind of like the Ange Ball ethos that we had gotten used to earlier in the season. And now it's coming back with the players coming back. So yeah, just really happy.
Scotty, how about you? What where do you want to go in terms of the talking points for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that hasn't been covered is probably the most exciting, also obvious thing to talk about, and that's Jed Spence. So I appreciate it, you guys saving that for me. But Jed was just phenomenal again. I think that's 3 matches in a row where he's arguably the man of the match, if not officially the player of the match, rather. So stoked for him. Obviously, we saw the quotes come out this week about Ange, you know, wanting to make it challenging on Jed and needing, I think last week, quotes about Jed needing to mature a little bit and all of that. And there's a lot of players who wouldn't have taken as kindly to that. And Jed obviously is quite mature and handled things well and got his opportunity and took it. I mean, I think at this point, whether it's on the right or the left, I think Poro and Udogie are second and third fiddle when it comes to the fullback power rankings, right, at Tottenham Hotspur. So super happy for Jed. And then the other thing I would mention that's not Tottenham Hotspur related is that Liam Delap is a fantastic striker, and I think will be the next big name when it comes to number 9s, not only in the Premier League, but potentially across Europe, depending on what happens. But that kid is phenomenal. If we're ever interested in bringing a striker to Tottenham Hotspur, he would be someone that I would really like to have at Spurs. He's just, a fantastic footballer. But we're obviously here to talk about Tottenham.
Yeah,
he should go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Make sure Tottenham Hotspur. Get that all the way in there. That was close.
He should go ahead and get the awful Chelsea transfer out of the way so he can get on with his career afterwards.
100%. Chelsea, maybe Bournemouth, and then maybe Spurs, and then things start to work out, right? So,
boy,
you just described Dominic Solanke's career.
I was going to say that sounds like a Dominic Solanke path if I've ever heard one.
I was going to mention Liverpool to round out the actual path, but there was no way to fit that in. So.
I want to touch on Jed Spence because I was actually a little bit surprised to see Jed Spence not only start but play the full 90. He's played a lot of football of late. There is a midweek match to look ahead to against Manchester City, which I know Manchester City hasn't been Manchester City this season, but it's still Manchester City. I was a little shocked by that and pleased as well. And it's especially just the fact that this guy is playing two different positions within the same game. He starts on the right, he goes over to the left when Poro comes on. All credit to him for what he's done. And I know the goal was a deflected goal, but it's still a goal. It still counts as a goal. He's been brilliant. All the praise to him. And I think that, there's a lot of ways you could go with man of the match. We're discussing like who we think that is. One guy did have 2 goals, and I thought otherwise, that's where I wanted to go next. Honestly, I thought otherwise Brennan Johnson kind of stunk in this match. I mean, I know he had the 2 goals, and that's great, and he does have that very unique skill of getting into positions where he can slot them home. That is his one thing that he does. But man, otherwise, it seemed like he was struggling to get his footing. He got yanked after about 65 minutes. There were a couple of other spots. I thought Udogie again looked kind of slow coming back from the injury. Not taking anything away from him, kind of to be expected. You want to get him his minutes. You guys talked about Danso. The goal that Spurs allowed, I thought was really like Danso getting a little bit spun and looking like, I thought everybody at one point or another. Yeah, everybody at one point or another in this match looked like they needed some longer studs on the bottom of their boots. Like this was I don't know what was up with the pitch, but guys were falling all over the place. I also thought guys looked kind of like they were falling on purpose at times to try to draw stuff. There was a lot of that going on for both teams. But I mean, there was a lot of great play from this midfield. I really want to harp on the combination of Lucas Bergvall and Rodrigo Bentancur, because I thought those 2 dudes just ran shit. Bentancur in terms of his defensive ability and Bergvall in kind of that role that we're almost seeing him slowly blossom into. And I've been really harsh on Lucas Bergvall, not only on this pod, but internally in our group chat. I don't think he has shown me enough this season. This was the first match where I thought, oh, that's the Lucas Bergvall that I want to see. Him being able to play that box-to-box role. And, Caroline, you mentioned it, that one run he made up the pitch with the ball. I was in the same boat. I was like, oh my gosh, what's he about to do? Like the anticipation of, is he going to shoot? Is he going to pass? Is he going to get a little give and go here? Like there was so many options for him because of the speed and because of the ability that he had to carry the ball. I really wanted to focus on those 2 guys, those 2 killer bees, if you will, in the middle of the pitch, because they were friggin' great today. And it was really, really impressive to watch what Ange is able to do with a few more options in that midfield now. Like he's able to be a little bit flexible. We saw Decky start in the midfield and then move out wide when Brennan Johnson came off and Madison came on, and even Madison came on, and it gave that entire midfield a little bit of a different complexion and a little bit more depth, even with Madison there, able to pull strings just in a different way than Kulusevski or even Bergvall can. I just thought that was really, really great. Dakota, you're nodding your head right along. Like what can this midfield be if those guys are playing at that level? Because they were both so good.
Yeah. So what I heard you say is basically that Brennan Johnson is still trying to find his legs after getting back from his injury.
Yes.
And Dan
yes.
Kulusevski did all of his defensive running for him, and then when Madison came in, Decky went out wide, and he has, the best motor maybe in the world of any.
He turns on the afterburners late in the match for sure. Yeah.
And so he can still do his defensive running, and that lets Madison do exactly what he is best at. And, in our intro, we have that quote from Madison that Ange Postecoglou told him, "You're going to see a different Spurs team under me, whether you come or not." And I think about the last few times that James Madison has played, and we are a different Spurs side with James Madison on the pitch than without him. And, Jed Spence is going to get all of the plaudits for his goal, which was going in anyway. If it gets deflected or not, it's a goal because he beat the keeper to his far side. But James Madison dribbled around literally 5 players to set up that goal. And, when he's able to do that, and then you have Lucas Bergvall, who maybe he did, but I don't remember off the top of my head, never once kind of dropped back into that 6 role. He played that box to box because Rodrigo Bentancur can actually stay and play the 6 sufficiently, not like someone else on the team who wears number 8. And so when everybody has their specific roles that they get to just focus on and nail down and have the freedom to play within their roles and not worrying about, am I going to have to cover for someone else? You see things happen like what happened today. And that's everybody playing at the top of their ability. I don't think we saw the best game that Spurs could possibly play today, but we're at like 85% as good at the ceiling, I think, from today. And that's just an exciting thing to watch these players play in the way that they can and in the way that Ange wants them to at the same time.
Well, and the fact that they win by 3 goals and they played not their best like that. And granted, it's against Ipswich, but it's a road match. And I don't know, there was something about this match going into it where I thought, you better be careful. You better be careful, not only because, you're starting to get some players back. You're starting to build a little confidence. You also don't want to be looking ahead to what's coming up at midweek. Like there was something about this match that was going to always be tricky for me. And you mentioned it right at the top. That first 5 to 10 to 12 minutes was like, whoa, boy, we're in for a battle here. Yeah. And I mean, thank God for Guglielmo Vicario and his shot stopping ability. I do think the other thing we saw with Vicario today, though, is him kicking it longer, much more, and not well, by the way. Like he was hoofing it like to midfield, and it was immediately getting turned over. But at least then Spurs were able to kind of retreat and get in position to defend a little bit better for the most part, rather than trying to play it out the back, turn it over, and be screwed. But Vicario was immense in terms of the shot stopping once again. That was brilliant. I saw mention too in the group chat of Matisse Tell. Who was it that put something in there about Tell today? And not okay, Dakota's got his hands up. What were your thoughts on him? Because honestly, for me, I saw that and I squinted a little bit at it. Matisse Tell for me so far has looked a little bit like Dom Solanke did in his first few matches with the club, where he's not producing in terms of the score sheet, but he's getting in positions, he's pressing well, he's creating things for others, which I think is key. But do you disagree with that?
No, I don't. Matisse Tell today had like a Richarlison game for me.
Yes,
which he's nothing on the score sheet. Everybody thinks he played terribly. I don't think he played terribly, but I think today he looked like a 19-year-old playing in a new country, in a new league that is a little more physical than the league that he came from. I think that's all that I wanted to point out and was pointing out about him today. But otherwise, had good hold-up play. He went and got the ball on the wing a couple of times. he tracked back and won the ball and was playing defense like alongside Bentancur a couple of times in that first half. Doing his job of making the ball move, pressing from the front line. I'm still seeing him wave everybody on when there's 2 or more passes between the center backs and the keeper. So he's doing all of the right things, and he's already scored a goal. I think today he just kind of showed his age a little bit, which is totally fine because he'll get there. And I don't think it's something that he needs to figure out right now, because according to Ange Postecoglou, he's going to have plenty of time under this manager and in this squad to figure that out.
Caroline, you've been watching Tell obviously for longer than any of us as a Bayern watcher. What have you thought about his first few matches? Obviously, he had the goal in the cup match, but the score sheet has not been lit up. But I'm fine with what he's doing so far. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with Dakota that it was a hardworking performance from him. I don't think there was any lack of effort by any means. It did to me feel like maybe our players were not looking for him as often as they were in the previous game, where he was getting chance after chance. In this one, it felt more like he was kind of like, working with the scraps that he could find. But really, it was the wingers that were getting much more involved in this one, which is fine. There's going to be games where there's like balance and some players will step up and some won't. But yeah, I also agree. He's, still, what is this, his 4th game, I think, with the team. He's adjusting, and I think he's adjusted pretty well, all things considered. So we've still got a lot to see from him. Also,
when the Sonny's cooking, you got to let him cook.
Yes. I was just going to add that if people have not watched the interview that they did on Inside Spurs with him, I thought it was a really nice watch, kind of showing like his personality, because, he is this young guy, and I think his personality really shone through in that. And he seems happy to be at the club, which for me was like the big takeaway. Like, that didn't look like a player who was there begrudgingly at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also think that in the Premier League, if you're not truly a 9, it's kind of tough to play as a 9 in the Premier League. You don't see people makeshift 9 very well, I think, with this physical and quick and fast of a league, right? And so I think my point here is if Solanke and Richarlison are fit, he's not getting many minutes as a 9, in my opinion, but he's going to get a lot of minutes on either side of that 9 for sure. So when that happens, I expect to see obviously a little bit more comfortability, but breathing room and time and space for him to work with. He just, as a 9 in the Premier League, you don't have time or space in any way, shape, or form, right? And that can be a little bit challenging, especially coming from a different league. So, but I think if you think of our wing contingent, it's Sonny, it's Brennan, and then it's probably Matthias Tell after those two, from what we've seen. So again, I expect him to get a lot of minutes out there, and he'll be fine. I also want to touch on Bentancur for just a second too. We were talking about the midfield a second ago.
I know that's your favorite spot, and I didn't let you jump in. Please do.
No, man. I was just burning up over here, but no. Bentancur is, that position's very selfless. It's really the only like true selfless position on the pitch, right? Defenders are always going to stand out for their defensive contributions, attackers for further attacking, but it's really that 6 where you either have a really shitty game or you have a game that no one talks about. And the latter is always a really good thing for a 6. And I think with Bentancur, when I'm going through who stood out today, he's the last person I think of, right? Because of the reasons I just talked about. But I would argue that any match we can look back on this season and say we played really well that day, Bentancur was on the field, and we probably didn't talk about him very much after that match, right? So Bentancur was one that deserves more credit than he's ever going to get, I think, for the role that he plays, and he did it well today.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do here, Scott. I mean, when I see Bentancur, and that's the reason I paired him with Bergvall in the conversation, is because I just thought it wasn't a true double pivot. Like, those two guys were not sitting whatsoever, but they worked so well in tandem in pairing off and just cleaning things up, because, the center backs are going to do their thing. They're going to get out wide. They're going to try and distribute. They're going to have to track back. We saw Danso doing that, especially that one late in the match, really, really hoofing it back. Like, the midfielders are there to protect, and it's almost like a protect and serve type of role. And yeah, you're not going to hear about it unless something goes terribly wrong. And that's why I'm kind of trying to give them a little bit of the shine here. It's almost like an offensive lineman in American football. Like, you don't hear about the offensive lineman unless they're getting penalized for something. Like, that's the only time you hear their name. Otherwise, they're just doing their job. And I thought that's what Bentancur did a really good job of doing here in this one. I brought up the officiating earlier. I just looked up the referee his name's Tim Robinson, which is kind of funny. I think he should leave, like, the profession, because he was awful. Like, it was really, really bad. He almost allowed the game to get so physical and allowed guys to continually get chopped down. And then all of a sudden it was just out of control. He did not seem to have any control over the match until it was too late. And then all of a sudden, it makes me fearful as a Spurs fan, knowing how many injuries this club has suffered over this season and last, to know that these teams, and I don't begrudge anything with Ipswich. I have no malice or ill will toward Ipswich. They're scrapping like hell to try and stay in the league. But if that's what they're going to do, like, I'm not a fan of that. And it's not that I think you need to, like, wrap these guys in bubble wrap. It's a physical game. It's a physical league, but some of the fouls today were just a little too much for me. The Jack Clark one, I mean, we were talking about it a little bit before recording, the stomp on Jed. It was not intentional by any means, but, and I don't think it was a red card, but it's like, those are the kinds of fouls that we were seeing a lot of. And that one did get a booking, but many of the other ones did not. So we don't need to harp on the officiating, but my goodness, it was pretty rough, Dakota.
Yeah, what was intentional, though, was the bulldozing of Kevin Danso inside the penalty box when the ball was almost out of play.
That was a tough one.
That's a penalty. Every single time he's nowhere near the ball. He's not going for the ball. He's not even trying to shield. It's just a straight. It's a blindside block. That's a penalty. That's a foul. A penalty in the NFL because he wasn't paying attention. So I don't understand that. But what's going to happen? They're going to have a conversation at some point. Here we go. Todd I can feel him inside my brain right now. They're going to have a conversation over the next couple of days. They're going to tell the referees to watch out for it. Pedro Porro is going to do the same thing on Wednesday. It's going to be a penalty to Manchester City. So we'll see the amendment play out, not in our favor, I'm sure.
So pessimistic. So why are you showing up here, in one of your few appearances on the pod, on the pod proper, and being so negative? Damn it. Come on, man.
Well, you know what? It's not going to matter because we're going to be up by 4 goals at that point anyway. We'll win 4-1 with the penalty, and then we'll have our own little thing to drive us forward. It's us against the world.
Fair enough. Guys, I think we've covered everything from the game. I only had like 4 real bullet points I wanted to hit. They were Sonny, that midfield, Kevin Danso, and then the last one I had was literally written out on my note sheet as Jed motherfucking Spence, and I think we covered all of those things. So let's talk about what we call this club, because I think that is, for some reason, in the news this week. The Tottenham, apparently there was an email that circulated. Now, this was a story broken by The Athletic earlier this week, but earlier this month, an email circulated to Premier League broadcasters. February 10th, in fact, was when that email was sent, because The Athletic saw it, apparently. And it was titled Tottenham Hotspur naming update, which, very strange. This was a weird story that I actually kind of enjoy, because it gets the bowels of the internet all worked up, and I like to just kind of slap them down a little bit. But
if you have the headline of that article, please read the headline of the article, because it's hilariously written.
Well, I don't.
It says Tottenham asked broadcasters to not refer to them as Tottenham anymore.
Oh, right. Which is a little bit cheeky from The Athletic, if I'm being honest. I would point folks to go read Cartilage Recaptain and the article the blog post that Dustin George Miller posted, because it is very much my speed. That's where I would go for this. But The Athletic was fine too, but The Athletic was more of the newsy piece. The headline was cheeky, but essentially some of the notable quotes from the club in this email are: Tottenham is the name of the area, not the club. They wrote in here, in a world, and this was all part of the rebrand that the club did, 6 or 8 months ago. In a world full of United cities and Rovers, there is only one Hotspur, Tottenham Hotspur. When referring to the team or the brand, please use Tottenham Hotspur, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, or THFC. Never refer to our club as Tottenham, Tottenham Hotspur FC, or TH. For the record, I don't think I've ever seen anyone refer to the club as TH. That is an abbreviation that you might see somewhere. I've never heard anyone actually call the club TH or seen that. I don't even really know that I've ever seen the club referred to as Tottenham Hotspur FC. That's one that I was unaware of. But of course, people refer to the club as Tottenham all the time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with folks like us who are fans and do a podcast about the club. We can refer to them as Tottenham. The fans in the stands are obviously going to sing the name Tottenham and not add Hotspur Football Club at the end of their songs or their chants. There's nothing wrong with any of that. The folks that got worked up about this, I think, are the types of folks that look to get worked up about anything that the club does when it comes to branding and imaging and all the things that aren't related to the football club itself. So I've had my say. I'll let you guys have yours. It's a funny story for me for that reason alone, that people are going to get worked up, and I don't think this is much to get worked out about. But do you guys have a different opinion, or are we all just going to kind of nod along here?
I mean, like you said, this was an ask specifically of broadcasters, which from that perspective, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. Like, the club wants to be referred to by its official name and kind of official capacities in, the league broadcast. Like, I don't think there's really a problem with that. But yeah, I mean, if fans are going to get worked up about it when it's not really pertaining to them, then, there are lots of things to be worked up about nowadays. I don't need to add anything to it.
Yeah, I just thought it was really funny. I'm still laughing about this whole thing. It's just really funny to me. Like, I'm not necessarily sure I still understand the rebrand. They just kind of like made the ball and the cockerel like wider, I think, is what this.
Yeah, it's images. It's graphic. I mean, Dakota's going to shout us down. It was a graphics update essentially, right?
Yeah. So I think it's funny because I've never heard the club called anything but Tottenham for a very long time, and so it kind of just caught me off guard, I guess, as to why they're worried that if it's out of respect for the area and like there's something going on with Tottenham and that's been requested, I totally understand. But beyond that, I just think it's funny, and I have no idea why they would actually go through with with this.
What you're bringing up, I think, is what will actually. I think it's the only thing that people could argue as to why this is an issue, because the club is obviously synonymous with the area. The Tottenham Hotspur is synonymous with Tottenham, and Tottenham, as the club said, Tottenham is the name of the area. It is not the club itself, but no one's gonna take that away. And I think there's fans who believe or still believe that there was the push years ago to move the club out of Tottenham. Like, all these wounds get ripped up, and I think that people have a lot of feelings about them, and I respect those feelings. Mm-hmm. I get that. Look, as a Baltimore person, back in the day, a football team got removed, an NFL team got removed from the city. Like, those are wounds that run deep. But that's not what's happening here. Like, this is literally, as Caroline said, it's just for the broadcasters. We don't hear the broadcasters refer to Wolves as Wolverhampton. We don't hear that ever. You hear them called Wolves like all the time, but you don't hear Wolverhampton. So there's a lot of other instances of this as well within the Premier League. So it's not that shocking to me. But Dakota, this whole rebrand thing was just that. It's not, they're not trying to change the club. They're just trying to spruce up what the club looks like and how it's talked about.
Totally. No one calls Arsenal Woolwich. They should.
They should.
They should. So the rebrand, just to remind everyone, is like the official club crest is not just the cockerel on the ball. The official club crest had the Tottenham Hotspur word mark underneath of it. So they took that away. They made things a little bolder so it could stand out more on socials, on the internet, on billboards, in print ads, stuff like that, just to make it more bold. They gave the font a new update, which I hope means that we're going to get rid of whatever the atrocity that's on the back of all the cup stuff this season. I hope that we can revert back to our Spurs wordmark and numbers next year. They introduced the new icons, the heritage stuff, and then a color palette update. And all of this is, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole if we wanted to about the club posturing itself to be sold for the most amount of money. But everything, even this, like Tottenham Hotspur or Spurs rather than Tottenham, is part of the rebrand. And it's all to keep things synonymous across all the channels, and it's to ultimately grow the brand. So, yes, Spurs want people like us living in America to come visit Tottenham. They want more people to know about Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, more than they want people to know about the area of Tottenham. Mm-hmm. And so when things get broadcast here in the United States, in Australia, wherever, they want that to be synonymous across the board. Because yes, people in England, sickos like us, know what broadcasters are talking about when they say Tottenham. The average person doesn't. So, like, I'm sure City and United would love to have the Manchester attached to the front of their phrases, like when they get mentioned. But they're also kind of big enough that enough people are kind of aware of them because of their brand and their recent success. We haven't experienced a bunch of that. So now we're trying to platform and elevate ourselves. And a lot of like that. It's simply, that's why there's no naming rights for the stadium right now.
I was just going to bring up the
Tottenham
stadium.
Hotspur. Yeah, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is far more valuable when Beyonce is playing 6 nights there, when you have 3 NFL games, when there's boxing, when there's an F1 thing. It's far more valuable than Google or Nike or whoever giving us $15-20 million a year.
And it's not called the Tottenham Stadium. It's called the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So it's all branding, and I understand that that's going to rub people the wrong way, and it's going to ruffle all the feathers. And you just need to get over it, because it's ultimately going to make the club more successful, whether it's under this ownership or another ownership or what. This is part of the self-sustaining model that Daniel Levy and Enoch have built over the last 20 years. And I'm not defending them. I'm just as frustrated that we haven't won anything, but the plan is so clearly laid out. And the frustrating part is that people don't want to acknowledge that.
And when my dad, calls me this week and says, who does Tottenham play this week? I'm not going to say, who? You mean Tottenham Hotspur? Like, that's not how that's going to go. Like, people can still refer to the club as Tottenham if they want to. Literally, this is for when they put the table up on television, it's going to say Tottenham Hotspur now, or it's going to say Spurs. It's not going to say Tottenham, just Tottenham. And there's a reason for that. And if you don't like it, you have absolutely no problems in your life other than this. So congratulations. Like, I'm very, very happy for you if this is the biggest thing bugging you, because there's a lot of other shit going on in the world that is way, way more important than this. My goodness.
I still think it'd be really funny if you did that to your dad, for the record. So
I may, just to fuck with him a little bit, and then I'll send him the article. Like, because this is something that to the layman, to the person who doesn't follow this stuff every day, you may actually have to explain why this is a thing and why it's important. And that's what I think we're trying to do here for folks who don't get it. But I think most of the listeners and viewers of this show get it. It's one of those things that, like, you can still sing Super Tottenham from the lane in the South Stand. Like, there's no problem with that. Like, Daniel Levy's not gonna start throwing popcorn from his box at you. Like, that's not gonna happen. Don't worry, it's fine. Everybody remain calm.
It's also Daniel Levy eating popcorn. It's so funny to me for some reason.
Yeah.
It's also, at its super root, you could argue that this is just an honoring of the founding of the club and of the original intents.
You could spin it that way, yeah.
Because
You know,
people
Hotspur.
don't. Yeah, so we're called Hotspur because of a military person from the Tottenham area named Harry Hotspur, and that's why we're named Tottenham Hotspur. It's after the man from the area, not the area itself. So, yeah. Again, rabbit holes everywhere.
No question about it.
I know. I'll still just say it one more time. Like when my average friend says, "How's Tottenham doing this year?" I'm going to be like, "Don't call my club that. Do not.
Don't you dare."
So that's
Only
gonna,
we can say that.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's only us, only for us. Guys, before we discuss the Europa League draw, I want to remind everyone, head on over to digitalspurs.com for some Tottenham apparel. That is Danny Garrison's site where he posts these beautiful pieces of art, which we love so much. Talking t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, hats, all kinds of different stuff. You see us rocking plenty of the gear here on the pod, on the YouTube page. I've got this is literally one of my favorite hoodies that I wear. That is a Digital Spurs piece, Tottenham football, 1882. No Hotspur on it. Sorry, Daniel Levy. Mine and Danny's bad, I guess. But go to digitalspurs.com for your new Tottenham merch. Then let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. Europa League, guys. Europa League is back, not this week, but the following week. Actually, it is on my birthday that we will face AZ Alkmaar in the Europa League. In the round of 16, the first of two legs. It'll be played on March 6th and 13th. Spurs kind of got the better of it, I would say. Instead of having to face Real Sociedad, that is who Manchester United will face on the opposite side of the bracket. Thoughts about this draw? I think it's a fairly decent draw, although if you start looking ahead, which I am not one to do, but I know many are. There are certainly some challenges that could lead Spurs be on Spurs' path to getting to Bilbao and the final. What are our thoughts on Spurs? Obviously, Spurs and Alkmaar squared off already in the Europa League, and Spurs beat them 1-0 at home early in the group stage. But it's going to be a whole different ballgame when you're talking about two-leg knockout competition here. Dakota, what are your thoughts on the draw for Spurs?
Ooh, no, I think it's very favorable for us. And I think I don't remember exactly, but I think that game was kind of one of the first ones that we had all of our injury troubles. So hopefully it's going to be, I know it's going to be different this time around. Cudi Romero, Mickey Van de Ven expected to be back for this first leg match. I think it's a favorable matchup. I think kind of the whole side of our bracket is favorable. Obviously, outside of Lazio, there who topped the entire league stage, they're pretty dangerous. But outside of that, I think everyone else is like, I feel really comfortable. Famous last words, right? But at this stage, we're safe in the Premier League. We can kind of toss out rotated sides there, and this can and should, and I think will be where we put all of our eggs in, try to win this thing, because it's doable with even 90% of our squad, which we should have 2 weeks from now.
As we've talked about over the last few weeks, putting all your eggs with as expensive as they are in one basket, it is risky, but I would agree with you. Like at this point, you've got to go try and win this damn thing. I'll be curious if either Van de Ven, Romero, Solanke, the likes of some of these guys who we're expecting back can get back. We're talking about less than 2 weeks away now from this match. So it's two legs. You can get away with a little bit of a stumble, but not too much of one. Caroline, Alkmaar, better than Sociedad, I guess is what we could say.
I think so. I mean, Sociedad would have been more of an unknown quantity. The fact that we've already beat Alkmaar makes me feel pretty good. And Yeah, I have to agree that our side of the bracket is pretty good. I have a little bit of worry about Frankfurt. I mean, that's not just my Bundesliga agenda. Like, they really do have some good games in them, and some quite good attackers, even though obviously they lost Marmoush. But yeah, I would not want to be on that sort of top right quadrant. That looks like the zone of death to me. But that's good, because that means that's like,
That's only because Jose Mourinho's over there.
yeah, one of those three tricky teams is going to be, knocked out before we have to face them. So
I saw Jose Mourinho. If he gets through the first round, potentially could face a former team in every step
Yes.
to win the thing.
Yeah, it's true. They
that
could face Roma.
says more about Jose, I think, than anything else.
They could face. They could. He could go up against Roma. Then he could go up against United, and then obviously in the final he could face Spurs. So that would be quite interesting. Scott, what are your thoughts on this draw? Because like I'm a little nervous about. I'm not as nervous about Alkmaar. I think Spurs can handle Alkmaar. I am nervous about either Ajax or Frankfurt. Ajax for the obvious reasons. Like we don't. There's a lot of karma that could come back on our ass there. But Frankfurt for the same reasons that Caroline mentioned. I mean, Frankfurt finished 5th to Spurs 4th in the Europa group stage. They were right there with Spurs, like just as good. So what are your worries? What are your thoughts on this draw?
I mean, the first thing I'll say is a Spurs side that has Romero and Van de Ven and Jed Spence and maybe Udogie over Porro if there's me saying anything there, right? And Sonny up top and Solanke and Matthias Tell and Brennan Johnson. You guys get the point. That side is a juggernaut compared to anyone else on this bracket, or in this bracket rather, without a doubt. Vicario, dare I mention, right? Who stood on his head. So we should beat every team in this competition on our day. I do think avoiding both of the Spanish sides is massive. Those are the trickiest sides in this competition for us, without a doubt. Mainly especially because of Bilbao. Yeah, I think both of those teams make it hard for us to play the type of football we want to play, right? And we have to maybe adjust to get a result. So I really like avoiding them. I do think Frankfurt is stronger than Ajax. I'm not really fussed about Ajax. I know they've been on a good run of form in the Eredivisie, but they've been on a good run of form in the Eredivisie. And when it comes to Frankfurt, I do think that they've got a great striker in Ekitete. Is that how it's pronounced?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, like
TK.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like watching him play, but I do think losing Omar Marmoush is going to pose challenges for them throughout the rest of the season. Obviously, they did what was best for the organization and for the player, right? But that's challenging. But I would say that Frankfurt is probably the third biggest problem for Spurs when I look at this bracket after these two Spanish teams. So that's where you could potentially trip up here. But in my opinion, if you get a result at home against Frankfurt, you're going to get through. A draw at home, or dare I say a loss, is where things get really dicey for the club. But as long as we take care of business at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, we should get through Frankfurt. And then, yeah, Lazio is a good side, and they finished top of the group, but they're not in form, as Caroline mentioned in our chat, right? They haven't been in form really at all in the Serie A season, right? So the only thing that's tricky about Lazio, and I'm not even joking when I say this, is they're just a cesspool of an organization. And when you go to Lazio, you're going to deal with things that are going to test your fortitude. And I don't want to say your character, because your character is not reflected, right? But your fortitude and your patience and your focus, right? Because especially if you're a player of color, it's going to be a challenging place to go. And I hate to say that, right? So love to avoid Lazio for that reason there. But I think there's every reason to think if you get to the semis, you do face Lazio, because I don't see Victoria Pilsen, Olympiacos, or Bodo Glimt doing really anything in this competition here on out.
Yeah, Lazio did finish top of the table in the Europa League, and we were talking about Fenerbahce earlier with Mourinho. They actually were the last team in. They were 24th, and barely got in. So the only team that's still left in terms of the group that finished just barely ahead of them was Alkmaar, and they finished 19th. So like Spurs are getting the good side of this in their first matchup for sure. It's just beyond that kind of what you face and who knows. I mean, it's good. Look, Spurs were always going to have to face good teams in order to win this competition. That's always going to be the case. But honestly, it's just a matter of getting the job done and as Dakota alluded to, putting the right eggs in the right basket going forward.
Wait, who's FCSB?
I think it's the Romanian team that's literally their name.
Correct.
Initials, which is funny to me.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
And you have to refer to them as FCSB. Like that is what they sent an email out to everyone to make sure that you refer to them as FCSB always.
Well, I just want to point out
Our
that
Bruschetti.
my could we display name was solely in reference to this competition and not the Premier League.
Respect.
I
Mathematically
think
still available.
I think that the could we there look.
Could we 2025-26?
Look, you guys know that I am not overtly positive when it comes to Spurs winning something. I'm going to get on board with the could we. I think they can, especially with the health and bodies coming back still. Like Dakota mentioned it earlier. Spurs just went on the road today, Saturday, and beat Ipswich 4-1 and probably played about a 70% of their capability with the bodies that they have.
Which is good. We're not at full strength yet.
Which is good because we're not at full strength. And that team that played today can play better. Like that was not, you know, there were moments in that match where you're like, ooh, this looks a little hairy, but it was a 3-goal margin. I think that with the way this team is starting to gel and starting to come together, I mean, it's 3 straight Premier League wins. We can toss out the cups because they're done. I know that those happened in between, but like, you know, the FA Cup is done, the League Cup is done. It's this and the league form, like, and that's all we have to focus on. As Scott was joking about, it's a double now. We can focus on a double, but could we? I'm kind of there for it because I think this would be a really badass competition to win. It would be a badass way to get into the Champions League next year too. Like, imagine Spurs do finish 10th or 11th or where they sit now, 12th. Like, imagine the form just kind of stays as it is, and you know they can't really jump over a bunch of teams. Imagine Spurs are 12th, but going into the Champions League next year. Like, that's a big fuck you to the rest of the league, as saying, look, we know what happened this year. We lost all of the bodies, and look, I this is where I will try to be positive. If Spurs are in the Champions League next year, it's going to be a big summer for this club. They're going to bring in enough bodies to withstand 4 competitions like they didn't do this past summer because reasons. Like I would feel confident that the checkbook would be out and the scouting is now in place, and Ange going into a 3rd season with Champions League football. I know it sounds really ambitious, but I think that would be really, really special. And if it doesn't happen, your ass better get up into, like, I don't want to play the Conference League, but like get into something, because that's what's going to be required at this point.
But look, in this scenario where we're in the Champions League next season, it means that Ange has already won us a trophy. So the club will back him. I feel pretty confident in that.
Honestly, we should win this competition. And I'm not saying that with any sort of bias because I'm a Spurs fan. We, on paper, should win this competition. And when we get our squad back that we didn't have all year, I think we're right on course with the season we all expected to have, just kind of picking it back up in one major competition at the end of it, right? And honestly, we all said it. If I was given you win Europa League and I can't guarantee fuck all and anything else, I'd have taken it in a second. I would not have had to think for a fraction of a second, and I would have taken that deal immediately, right? And we all would have. It's the Europa League. We have history in this competition. We've won it multiple times. We are as much as I joke about, oh, I'm a cup guy this year, we are a cup organization, right? That is our history, is winning cups. Not that we haven't won leagues, we have, right? But Winning the Europa League would be massive for this organization. Like I said, on paper we should. If I'm Ange, I'm telling the team exactly that, and I'm telling them if we don't, it's a failure. So let's make sure we don't fail and we go accomplish our goal, right? Especially when each of these is 2 legs, it opens everything up.
Here. I completely agree. I mean, you say they should win this. I just checked as you were talking. We talked last week before the draw about how Spurs, Man United, and Lazio were all kind of like joint favorites. After this draw, Spurs have moved into the clear favorites. They are, according to the sports book that I use, they are plus 430 to win this competition. Both Man United and Lazio and Bilbao, for that matter, are plus 600. So Spurs are the outright betting favorite to win this competition, which start acting like it, I say. I mean, like you're talking about, Scott, go fucking do the thing. And it starts in early March against AZ Alkmaar. So that, just shut down Troy Parrott again. That's all you got to do, right? That's all it's going to take.
Get your boots, Scotty. We're sending you.
Yeah.
Hey,
that's no question.
I'm down. I'll make a few runs. That's all I got in me. Few, but
that's all any of us have at this point, Scott, is just a few. Let's be honest.
Dude, if I could get one match for Spurs and come on in like the 88th minute, oh, that'd be sick. I'd live out a dream. I'd only have to run for 4 or 5 minutes, call it a day. And yeah, so anyways, I mean, I think that's feasible. I don't see why that couldn't be made possible, if I'm being completely honest. So
I don't know that they can register you in the squad for this particular competition in time, but I'll put in a call to everyone I know involving that. We'll
for next year's quadruple squad, he'll be.
I was going to say we need an injury crisis so they can get a loophole.
No, we're done with injury crisis. No, waving you off there. That is going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page. I mentioned it earlier, but youtube.com/Tottenham Depot is where you can find us. You can also leave a comment there, share it, spread the good word about our good little podcast. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice as well to help spread the word about the show. And follow us on the socials at Tottenham Depot. You can follow Scott at Scott G. Bird. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. You can follow Dakota at Dakota J. Booth. And you can follow me at A. Stedka. And as always, follow us at Tottenham Depot. We'll be back next week. We'll have both the City matches. City on Wednesday for the men and City next Sunday for the women. We'll probably be talking about a Bunny Shaw hat trick at that point, but we'll see. And I'll be back with some scouting information as well on our Australia contingent after seeing them play against the U.S. women in the She Believes Cup as well. Until then, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.